Today, we're watching animals that got the middle finger from evolution, and I'm hoping that they didn't include me on this list. Anyway, let's go!
Evolution is a bitch named Emily. That's
Emily?
it. That's the whole intro. Don't get me wrong, the concept of evolution's pretty cool. It's the reason giraffes get to flex their high in the entire animal kingdom. But there are just times where nature and evolution decide to team up and absolutely hoe an animal's entire existence. So here are 10 animals that I personally think got done the dirtiest. It's not exactly in order, but obviously some animals are going to get violated more flagrantly than
the
others.
tusks are
and
crazy.
I say that because if this list were actually in order, the octopus would probably medal at the Oppression Olympics for... Well, let me explain. Octopus are highly intelligent, and scientists believe they have the same cognitive ability as a 2-year-old human.
Wait, is he doing a Rubik's Cube? Bruh. I can't even do a Rubik's Cube. You're telling me an octopus is smarter than me?
Which might not seem impressive, but that means octopus are on the same IQ level as some dogs. They're even smart enough to use tools, whether it's using the tentacles of the venomous man of war as a
Wait, but dogs can't do a Rubik's Cube? Are dogs smart enough to do Rubik's Cubes and they just can't because they don't got thumbs?
weapon, which they actually do, or carrying a coconut around to keep as a travel-sized panic room.
Wow. They go
But being
inside?
smart is the only thing they have going for them. First of all, most octopus come into the world as orphans.
So cute.
The mother octopus will spend months guarding and washing her nursery of up to 50,000 eggs. Since it's too dangerous to leave them alone, and since there's no daycare underwater, she often won't eat the entire time. Which means once the clutch of eggs are finally ready to hatch, the mother is shriveling, starving, and ready to become initials on a Twitter bio.
What?
Struggle doesn't end there. In fact, that's when it starts. These babies the size of a grain of rice have to figure out life in an ocean full of animals that'll actually try to put an end to it. It's so bad that out of the 50,000 children, if more than 2 survive to adulthood, it's considered overachieving. That honestly wouldn't be a big deal if nature didn't already nerf them with their lifespan. It's so ridiculously short that a majority of octopus species that live life to the fullest still won't be alive for their first birthday.
Wait, they live less than 1 year? I thought octopuses were like jellyfish where they live forever. My bad. I didn't know you were suffering so much, octopi.
Being an octopus means you can be born on New Year's, have a midlife crisis by June, only to be a memory by October. Giving an animal high intelligence just to cut its life after 1 to 2 years just seems like an intentional dick move.
That is messed up.
And because they have no shell or no armor, they'd honestly be lucky to live that long. Having no real way to defend themselves means a good number of them end up a sea lion's chew toy or a dolphin's frisbee. To be fair, octopus do have camouflage. In some cases, highly toxic venom.
They're so pretty!
But for the most part, they get bodied by most of the ocean. And to add insult to injury, every octopus you see is probably a virgin because once they get laid, they die. We already saw what happened to the mother, but where daddy at? Once the male octopus mates, he basically just gives up on life.
He just
the male
dies?
octopus that's cashed in his V-card will swim around catatonic.
Guys, be grateful you're not an octopus, okay? Be grateful that you get to keep on living.
Until he either gets torn apart by predators or dies of starvation as his body falls apart due to senescence. Not like it really matters because most female octopus are bigger than the males and sometimes they'll attack and cannibalize him during. But what? Sure, if his date doesn't put him out of commission, his post-nut clarity will. Octopus don't live long, but for the months they're alive, their entire...
Imagine you're with a girl and she just eats you after. She just eats you. It's kind of like that one scene from Tokyo Ghoul where he meets with the girl and she goes, jump!
Existence is a jihad. Now you know why Squidward couldn't give a if a paid him. But at least with the octopus, it just...
Wait, Squidward's like dying tomorrow. That's messed up. He just goes to work every day. He's like, oh, today might be my last day, guys. He don't care.
Seems to be really bad luck. They may be a victim of circumstance, but at least you get the idea that nature didn't go out of its way to screw them. Not like with this bird. Kiwi bird is probably the best proof that evolution ain't perfect. This tiny bird is actually part of the rat-type family. And this...
The rats? The rat related?
This cookout includes ostriches, emus, cassowaries, and the rhea. But unlike his bigger cousins, this bird that shares its name with a fruit is about 18 inches tall and no more than 7 pounds. It's kind of like having cousins 6'3", 6'4", and 6'6", yet you came out looking like Tory Lanez. Like your family's tall enough to fit in an NBA locker room, yet you get it from a chair and stay the same height. But of course, nature wasn't done screwing with this bird because like its relatives, they can't fly. Totally flightless, and despite being related to ostriches, a Jurassic reject, and a bird that literally won a war against Australia, kiwi's about as defenseless as the fruit that got named after it. Basically, you're looking at a bird that can't bird. The kiwi is such light work that they can only survive on islands without any mammalian predators because they're really a couple stray cats away from being put in the history books.
Imagine you're like a prehistoric animal. You roll up on a house cat and he can take you out. He can just take you out. You're just so small.
And somehow, that's not it. Because nature shrunk everything about this bird. Everything except the eggs they have to push out of their body.
Why is the egg as big as the body? What?
Despite being about 60 times smaller, kiwis have to deal with eggs nearly the same size as ostriches. And at 20% of its body weight, that would be like the average woman birthing a 35-pound baby. With the same equipment. It's such a hell to live that the egg actually rearranges the bird's organs and stretches its rib cage. There's too many things wrong with them for me not to think nature had
These
serious
poor
beef with this bird.
baby
Especially when
birds.
you realize the kiwi's closest ancestor was the elephant bird, which was
my
about 10
God.
feet, 1,600 pounds.
So why are they so small if their ancestor is like 10 feet tall? What happened? What happened in the evolution chain that got them so messed up?
So yeah, they got nerfed bad. At least they didn't get hit
Literally.
as hard as, say, the sloth. For being completely honest here, the sloth has almost nothing going for it. Because they insisted on eating nothing but
They're
leaves,
so
their diet
cute.
makes them one of the
Don't they just
slowest
fall out
animals
of
on
the
the planet.
trees?
Because they physically can't afford to spend energy they don't have, because going into debt would mean death. It's to the point where baby sloths have to quite literally hold on for dear life, because
Oh
if
my
it falls to the ground before,
God.
the mother likely won't waste the energy trying to get it back. And that's because if you're
Imagine your mom's too lazy to save you after you fall. Oh my God, bro.
a sloth, leaving this tree is the most dangerous thing you'll ever do. Sloths only poop about once a week, and when they do, they'll
Once
climb
a
out of the tree
week?
and get on the ground to do it. Why they don't just drop a deuce from the trees, I couldn't tell you. Nobody knows what goes on in their heads. But this means about half of all sloth deaths involve getting clapped on the
They look so scary. Why are they built like that? They're so cute. Why is the head so small and they look so bald? And then the body's like chunky.
toilet
Ew.
like Elvis. One thing sloths have going for them is that they're so mind-numbingly slow that algae actually grows on them, giving them free camouflage. There's a
Camo!
catch. There is always a catch. When one of your biggest ops is an eagle with quite literally some of the best eyes in the world, wearing a moss blanket isn't gonna amount to too much.
Oh no. Oh my
you know
God!
evolution-
Bro.
Was actively f***ing with them because sloths are actually really good swimmers and can hold their breath for 40 minutes, longer than dolphins
40
and seals.
minutes?
But it means almost nothing when most of the time they go
40!
swimming is by accident when they fall out of a tree. And that weak-ass doggy paddle might save them from drowning, but it won't save them from getting murked by an anaconda or a black caiman. But
Yeah,
the
you're
really sad
good,
part
buddy.
is, sloths
Oh my
could
God,
actually
they're
be
so
way
cute.
better than this. Its close relatives, the armadillo and anteater, are able to put the same claws that it has to good use, and anteaters have even been known to swing on jaguars. You have a
Wow.
homicidal vacuum cleaner that has put jaguars and
Oh
people
my God,
in
they
coffins,
beef with the
and then you have a
jaguars!
moss blanket with a face. Just like the kiwi, the sloth used to be better than this. Megatherium, aka the giant ground sloth, was in the same weight class
my
as elephants, and they
God.
actually knew how to use those claws. So much
That's
so
so
that if Ice Age were
cool.
realistic, Sid would have worn Diego's ass like a fur coat. But its massive size ended up screwing it in the end, as they basically got hunted into oblivion by humans, leaving us now with the
Yeah.
virtually defenseless, dead-eyed,
Now
slower
they're
than
just
molasses
dumb
algae
and
apartment that we call
small.
the sloth. You know that thing on TV where it's like someone gets a genie that grants wishes, but only does so in a way that horribly bends them over in the end, and the moral's supposed to be careful what you wish for? That basically sums up this next animal, because it looks like it got finessed by a genie in one of the most disrespectful ways possible. This is a fiddler crab.
Oh my
Male fiddlers have
God!
one giant brolic claw
The
whose
one with
only
the little
purpose is to get a
claw!
female's attention. Many crabs choose their mate based on who has the biggest claw and therefore can pass the best genes to her clutch of eggs. The problem is, that is literally the only thing this claw is good for. Because that claw is too big to pick up food, the male fiddler crab can only feed himself with
just
that smaller claw.
useless?
That massive claw is actually a disability that means the males either eat half the food or take twice as long as the females.
So then it's kind of stupid to mate with the one with the bigger claw because they can't even use it. So if it was smaller, they're like screwing up their genetics because the claws are gonna keep getting bigger and bigger if they keep getting with the ones with the big claw. But if they got with the smaller claw and the small claw it got smaller and smaller, then they could eat with both hands. This is why they say size doesn't matter. Sorry, I had to say it.
The only problem with that is that these crabs only eat during low tide, and the longer the crab spends eating, the more likely they are to end up as someone else's main dish. In the evolutionary arms race for female validation, the male fiddler crab is more likely to end up getting eaten by gulls, raccoons, reptiles, and sometimes even bigger crabs. And since the females enable
Oh my
this
God,
by
they're
being attracted
blue?
to the bigger but less functional claws, the fiddler is now trapped in a vicious cycle. By
Wow.
preferring males with a trait that quite literally gets
Oh my
them
God,
put
I
on a
just
shirt,
said
the females
this!
indirectly screw the next generation. Gotta be careful what you wish for.
I'm so smart.
Especially if you're this
I'm
next
so
animal.
smart.
Because the peacock has the same problem on steroids. We can all agree that the peacock is the biggest flexor in the animal kingdom, and rightfully so. And just like with the
They're
crab
so
and basically
pretty.
every other aspect of life, bigger is most certainly better. The more colorful and eye-catching, the better the peacock's chances at bagging a pea hen. They'll even shimmy their tail feathers in a way that hypnotizes any female watching. But like I said,
Wow.
never make a deal with a genie. Because the good news is a peacock showing off will always be the center of attention. Bad news is sometimes that attention comes from a 700-pound assault weapon with stripes.
Oh.
And because those tail feathers are so
Oh,
heavy,
no!
not only can't the peacock see behind itself, even if it does see death coming, it takes them longer to get off the
no!
ground and out of the tiger's reach. Just like with the crab, the
He seemed
peacock's
okay.
biggest flex is often what gets it buried. In a cruel twist from fate, the peacocks that are safer from tigers are usually the ones that get less attention from females. So by having a preference, the peahens doom their future children to a fate of ultimately ending up as a tiger's toothpick.
That's messed
The peacock
up.
and fiddler both got handed massive L's from nature, but at least you can see the thought process behind it. Having huge claws and fancy feathers attracts females, so technically it does serve a purpose. In comparison, the Luna moth got shafted for no reason at all. To make a long story short, adult
so
Luna
cute
moths
too.
don't have a mouth and therefore can't eat. The only thing keeping them alive is the energy they store as caterpillars, but once that runs out, so does their time.
So they're just starving? The longer the time, they just starve? That sucks!
Luna moths live for about a week, just long enough to reproduce and doom their children to the same fate of a non-consensual hunger strike. If you ask Google why the Luna moth doesn't have a mouth, it'll tell you because its only purpose is to mate. Which is really nature not giving a fraction of a about them.
Imagine you're born just to have babies and then die. That's so depressing.
Yeah, that's cruel. Question is, what could possibly be crueler? Well, if you know what this is, you probably have the answer.
What is
this
that?
This is a sea louse. It's a member of the Caligidae family of copepods, which is basically just a bunch of small crustaceans.
It
You
looks
probably noticed that for the
prehistoric.
peacocks and the crabs, it was the guys getting the worst of it. Apparently, nature believes in a weird form of equality because right now it's up for the girls. The horror
Let's
show starts
go!
when a male sea louse
Equality!
kidnaps a much smaller female and then forcibly drags her into what I can only describe as a crustacean sex dungeon, where he can have up to 20 other victims also trapped. It's at this moment where
Why are they so
this
freaky?
movie loses its rating because the male will forcibly impregnate every last female in his burrow,
my
and this often
God.
involves penetrating her abdomen.
Ew.
Don't worry, it gets worse. As her
Ew.
brood of children that she never asked for begin to grow, they decide to start eating their way out. Eventually, the mother's body splits open as her nursery of psychopaths rush out of her now mutilated husk of a corpse.
Oh my
This might be one of the only
God.
times where the babies abort the mother. Doesn't even really get to give birth. Her children just bring her death. You might be wondering why evolution would even give this nonsense the green light. Well, the newborn sea louse are entering an ocean full of danger, and having a full meal before they make it out on their own apparently increases their chance of survival. And
That's
by cannibalizing their own mother,
messed
it's
up.
basically a home-cooked meal. Somehow, this isn't even the worst birth on this
How is this not the worst? How does it get worse, bro? This is so messed up.
list. That title belongs to the hyena because straight up death is actually better than what they go through.
Hyena.
Female hyenas evolved a pseudo-penis that's so similar to the
Huh?
real thing, it's actually difficult to tell males and females apart.
Huh? The females have a what? have a what?
This is actually a female. Only problem is, it's not just for show, they actually have to give birth to that thing, and yes, it's
How? My only question is how?
every bit as painful as you think. And just to somehow make it even worse relative to the mother's size, hyenas have to give birth to the largest cubs of any carnivore, and they have to do it
Oh
through
my
a penis.
God.
Good amount
Oh
of
my
first-time mothers
God.
don't even survive this because the process involves rupturing and splitting open the pseudo to make it easier for the cub. But the cubs don't get it easy either. About 60% of hyena cubs will
They're so
suffocate on the way out
cute.
and become past tense before technically even joining the present.
my God.
And you would think because this directly affects the mother and the cub that evolution would have patched this. But apparently nature and Lion King have something in common when it comes to doing hyenas dirty.
Uh-huh. Oh my God. Oh my God, he's cooked. He's
But if we're
cooked.
talking about an animal that got done dirty, this picture kind of speaks for itself.
Did he just stab himself in the head? The horn is stabbing him in the head?
Matter of fact, this is probably going to be the thumbnail because this is nature at its grimiest.
Wow.
A lot of y'all probably knew this animal is coming just from reading the title, but for those of you that didn't, that was the skull of the babarusa. It's a wild pig found in Indonesian
Babarusa.
islands like Sulawesi. If you already knew that, it's probably because of those teeth. Those tusks penetrate out of its snout only to do a complete 180 and head right
Oh
back
my
towards its
God.
face. If the male babarusa can't wear down this hellish overbite or he doesn't lose them in a fight, then the teeth will end up growing right back into his head, penetrating the skull and ultimately piercing the brain. The
That
worst part of it all is that
sucks.
by the time it gets clapped by its own dental plan, the babarusa's probably already had children and therefore passed on its bullshit to its kids. It's a lot like Parkinson's. Okay, hear me out. The problem with Parkinson's is that it usually develops late in life, usually around the age of 60. And patients can have it for years without being diagnosed. So by the time they do find out, it's possible they could have already had kids and grandkids that they could have passed it off to. See the problem, right? The only good thing is that it's somewhat rare for a child to inherit Parkinson's from their parents.
That's
The
good.
babarusa, not so lucky. And as long as females find big tusks attractive, and as long as the tusks only murk them after they've had babies, this pig is going to be screwed eternally, and evolution can't even stop it. But
Why do the females always like the big things that get them killed?
when you talk about being sodomized by the fleshy phallus of nature, you're probably talking about cheetahs. If you watch Tearzu, if you're watching
Cheetahs?
this, you probably do. You probably heard him say that cheetahs are F-tier garbage that either need to be buffed or just vaulted out of their misery.
Cheetahs are bad?
I love cheetahs,
I
I
thought they
really
were, like,
do,
the
but out of every
fastest thing in
animal on
the
this list,
world.
evolution might have bodied the cheetah the hardest, and for one simple reason. Cheetahs are really fast. That is all they have. Cheetahs are a textbook example of why you should never dump all your evolution points in one skill,
my
because you'll just
God.
get bent over in every other aspect of life.
Whoa!
Because they're built for speed and absolutely nothing else, cheetahs often get bullied by other predators, especially lions and hyenas. And because cheetahs have to expend so much energy just to make a kill, it forces them to rest right after, which makes it really easy for other animals to just step in and run their pockets.
Oh my god, he just got robbed!
But for real, if you're a cat and a bird that literally only eats the dead is able to run you off, you got a lot of problems. Worst part is, cheetahs could easily avoid all of this. Leopards are also lightweight, solitary hunters that occasionally get their food stolen, but they're able to carry their kills up in trees where they can't get harassed by scavengers. But in the evolutionary race for speed, cheetahs evolved non-retractable claws to use as cleats to keep traction while running. Which is why cheetahs can't climb trees, so they gotta get violated on the ground. Cheetahs are such pushovers that one hyena can successfully rob several cheetahs right in their face and then dare them to do something about it. Cheetahs compromised everything for speed, so now they get to speed run through life. About 70% of cheetah cubs born in the wild will be 6 feet under before their first birthday.
What?
Just to add on to that, because why the hell not? Thanks to
so
genetic
cute.
bottleneck, a majority of the cheetah population is highly inbred. What you're looking at is a cat that doesn't really know how to cat. Because instead of roaring like lions, tigers, and leopards, the best this spotted doormat can do is chirp like a bird.
Does this mean I can have one as a pet if they're just stupid? They're stupid and they can't do anything, they just run fast? I kind of want a cheetah as a pet, but it's probably illegal, right? I think it's probably illegal.
Matter of fact, if you YouTube it real quick, you'll find they make every sound that isn't a roar.
Wow.
And that's how you know evolution went out of its way to them. Cheetahs have been around for about 3 million years and decided they were just gonna IM speed their way through life. And because of that, unless it's a 100-meter dash or a bird call contest, this overgrown house cat loses every single time. Obviously, there's a lot of good things about the cheetah, but not nearly enough to justify the abuse they go through. Which is probably why a majority of cheetahs in captivity experience severe anxiety so bad that it prevents them from mating and they need an emotional support dog.
They need an emotional support dog! Oh, that's so cute!
Which is cute, don't get me wrong, but it's another reason why cheetahs are dangerously close to being the pandas of cats, and that's not something anyone wants to be.
No, I want them to be pandas. I want to have one at the zoo that I can pet.
And don't get it twisted, I don't enjoy roasting cheetahs, I actually really love them, but if nature has favorites, this Cheeto's mascot isn't one of them. And those are 10 animals that got the middle finger from evolution. I'm not gonna lie to you, this video was low-key a pain to make. So if you like the video and you'd like to support this channel, my Patreon's gonna be in the description.
Thank you so much!
Please,
I now know so much about
money
animals.
if you can't afford it. Because honestly, I don't need money, I just wanted to cover my crippling Wendy's addiction.